Well, okay. If you could shut up. Hello. Let me know if you can hear me okay, please. Everybody. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on these notes. Of course, they'll be able to play back and re-uploaded. Start time is 7 minutes and 12 seconds in. Okay, so today's notes, we're going to go over again how we solve polynomials equations by factoring. We did this back December, November-ish, and touched on it again back in January. Okay. So first problem on here. Oh, okay. Let's see. So our goals are to move all the terms to one side to set the thing equal to 0. Factor it as completely as we can, hence why we did factoring last week. Set each factor to equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay. For most of these, we're going to try to do solving by factoring as much as we can. But if we get stuck and we find something that we can't factor, we may have to use the quadratic formula. Okay. Right. So in these, I'm going to work through a majority of the problems on the first 2 pages, just so that you have as much resources as possible to come back and look at again. Okay. Alright, so first problem here, x cubed plus x equal to 0. So everything's already equal to 0, which is nice. Now I want to factor this. So when I look at this guy, I see that it has the greatest common factor, in this case of x. So I'm going to factor that out to the front, and that'll leave me with x squared plus 1 still equal to 0. Okay. Now that I factored it, I'm going to take the 2 parts, x and x squared plus 1, and set them both equal to 0 and see what we get. So if I set x equal to 0, I mean, yay, woo, okay. There's no solving needed for that problem. For the other one, x squared plus 1 equal to 0, I'm going to solve that for x. So first thing I'm going to do is subtract over the 1. Just like in class, I'm going to write all the in-between stuff down. If you don't need to, cool. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. One thing we want to note here, we introduced the square root, so we have to have plus or minus. So I have x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1. Well, square root of negative 1 is I. Okay. So all of our answers here, x can be 0, a positive I, or a negative I. Okay. Right, moving on. Second problem here is not set equal to 0 at the start. So I needed to subtract over the 3x squared from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. That'll leave me with 4x cubed minus 10x squared equals 0. Okay, again at this point I check for a GCF, a greatest common factor. This one does. Let's see, the largest number that goes into both 4 and 10 is 2. And the largest power of x these have in common is x squared. Okay, so I'm going to take that out. So then I think about like what's going to be left over. So if I did 4 divided by 2, because I'm taking out that 2, it's going to leave me with 2. And I had 3 powers of x, I'm taking out 2 powers of x, so it'll leave 1 power of x behind. Okay, and then if I did negative 10 divided by 2, it'll leave me with negative 5. And if I take out all the powers of x, just won't have any x's left, equal to 0. Okay, so now we got it factored as much as we can. Both of these were greatest common factors. Some of them are going to be like box method, some of them are going to be difference of squares. It's all going to vary a bit. The first one we have here, 2x squared. I'm going to set that equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is divide by 2. And get x squared, or 0, x squared equals 0. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides, plus or minus. So I get x equals, well, plus or minus 0 doesn't quite make sense, it's just 0. Okay. Yeah. So we ended up with 0 again on this one. For the second factor, oops, sorry, checking in with the chat every now and then. If you guys need me to slow down or anything, please just let me know, okay? I'm very new to this. 2x minus 5 equals 0. Oh, and there's also about a 10-second delay or so. Just be aware of that too. If you pose a question to me, it's going to take about 10 seconds before I see it, okay? So I'm going to solve this one for x. Add 5. And divide by 2. And if 5 halves, or as a decimal, that's 2.5. Okay. So x in this problem can either be 0 or 5 halves. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to work through several of the problems on this page and the next page, just so that you have more problems to reference back to when you try the assignment. Okay? So, apologies for the long notes there. I just want to make sure you guys have resources is all. Alright. Yosh, which one are these notes on? This is for solving polynomials, lesson number 1. Okay, and I recognize that not everyone has printers, so if you are following along, sheet, notebook, paper, whatever, you can just write down like the equation part. Okay? Alright, I'm going to clear my screen and go on to the next ones. Remember, you can always rewatch this. Alright, problem number 3. X to the 4th minus 64 equals 0. Okay, there's no greatest common factor. It's already said equal to 0. What I'm recognizing here, and again, this really is like me trying to talk through like what my brain is doing, is that this is a difference of squares. Okay, this is a difference of squares problem. So we need to figure out what our A and our B are for this. So x to the fourth, that is x squared squared. So our A value is x squared, and our B value, well, square root of 64 is 8. Okay. So now that I have my A and my B, I can use the formula. I'm going to write down the formula off to the side here. A squared minus B squared is A plus B, A minus B. Okay. So I'm going to replace the things. X squared plus 8, x squared minus 8 equal to 0. Okay, now that we got it factored, we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. That's our first one here. X squared plus 8 equals 0. Okay. So solving this for x, I'm going to subtract over 8. Get x squared equals a negative 8. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, when you introduce a square root, you have to include plus or minus. So I end up with x is equal to positive or negative square root of negative 8. Now this we can clean up a bit. Okay. So the fact that there's a negative at all in that square root tells us that there's going to be an I, the imaginary number I, in our answer. Then I need to clean up the radical itself. So 8, square root of 8, let's see. It's 2 and 4, and 2 and 2. The square roots, we're looking for twin pairs. So I'm going to have a 2 come out because it was a pair, and a 2 stay inside because it didn't have a pair. Okay, I'm going to write that a little bit neater. It's a little messy. Okay. So there's 2 of the answers. There's one positive, one negative. Again, I'm checking in with chat. There's about I think a 10-second delay. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in there. Okay. X squared minus 8 equals 0. Is our other factor. I'm going to solve this for x. Take the square root. Sorry. Just showed me on my side that it couldn't connect to chat. I don't know. Trying to figure it out. I also forgot, if I touch my computer screen, it gets rid of the notes for a second there. But they're back. Sorry. Okay. And then we have to simplify 8 the exact same way that we did for the red problem. It's going to split into 2, 4, 2, and 2. It's the exact same tree. So x is equal to plus or minus 2 root 2. Okay. So the final list of all of the things that x can be for this problem I have a positive 2I root 2, a negative 2I root 2, hey Nick, on the assignments that you're giving us to do we just do 2 out of the 3 papers? I can pull that up as soon as I get done with this problem really quickly. Okay? Just a second. A positive 2 root 2 and a negative 2 root 2. Okay. Alright, so to answer next question about the assignments, I'm going to clear this off for a second and show you on Google Classroom. Okay. Sorry for the momentary delay. Alright. So on Google Classroom, regardless of the class period that you're on, I just haven't had 4th period open. Classwork for this week, lesson 1, solving polynomial equations. Here's a copy of the notes that I'm working through right now. I'm not going to do them all, but just so you have resources. Here's a link to this very live stream so that you can rewatch it again if you need to. Okay. Then you get to, whoa, not that. Pick a method for the activity. Both the digital and paper version of the activity are posted below. Work through either version and submit here. Also be sure to upload a photo of your work. Okay. So it's the same activity, there's just a digital one if you're having a good time with technology, or if you've been having some issues, here is a paper version as well. Of course, just, I'm flexible, so if you need to just copy down the problems and work through them that way, and then upload it all that way, it's fine, okay? I just wanted to give you guys options depending on what you had access to. Nick, I hope that answers your question, sir. Okay. Alright, I'm going to go back to the notes now. Okay. Alright, we're on problem number 4. 5x to the 5th minus 80x. Okay, so the first thing I see when I see this problem is that it does have a greatest common factor. In this case, there's 1 power of x in common, and the largest number goes to above 5, and 80 is 5. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so I'm going to take out the 5x. So if I did 5 divided by 5, it's going to leave me with 1. And if I take out 1 power of x, it'll leave me with x to the 4th. For the 80, if I do negative 80 divided by 5, it'll leave me with, crap, I can brain, no I can't, 16, yeah. Okay. Alright, and now that I've got it factored, I'll set each part equal to 0 and solve. So I'll set the first part. Divide by 5, still get 0 for this one. 0 is a very common solution. And for this guy, I'm going to set all that equal to 0. We can also factor it by difference of squares before we set it equal to 0. I think we'll be okay. Yeah, we'll be okay. X to the 4th minus 16 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to add over the 16. Get x to the 4th is equal to a positive 16. Instead of taking a square root like we've done in the previous problems, we're going to take a 4th root. And we still want to include plus or minus. So that's a little bit new. So the 4th root of 16. Okay, so we're trying to think of a number that if we multiply it by itself 4 times gives us 16. Okay, that number happens to be 2. You can also use Desmos as an online calculator to help with that sort of stuff. Okay. Alright. So here we've got x equal 0, a positive 2, and a negative 2. Okay. Alright, moving on. Okay. Just readjusting my side, sorry. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to work through several problems just so that we have lots of examples. Alright, question number 5, x cubed plus 125 equals 0. Okay. So this is a sum of cubes, because we have x being cubed plus a perfect cube number. Okay. So I need to write down the sum of cubes formula. So sum of cubes says if we have a cubed plus b cubed, that'll factor into a plus b, a squared minus ab plus b squared. Remember, I never expect you to memorize formulas. If you just like Google it, like sum of cubes, difference of cubes, you'll be able to find the formulas super easy. Okay, so in this case my a value is x, and my b value is 5. Now I know that just because I've worked with the numbers a lot. It was on our notes. We could also do the cube root on like a Desmos calculator or your phone calculator of 125 to see what we get back. Alright, so now I'm going to plug everything in. X plus 5, x squared minus 5x plus 25 equals 0. Okay, now I want to see if I can factor this some more. Okay, x plus 5, there's nothing we can do with that guy. He's linear. He's a 1 power of x. He's not a pattern or anything. He's good. The second one over here, x squared minus 5x plus 25, I want to see if there's something else I can do with it. Okay, so maybe, maybe not. We'll see. So it's a trinomial with an a value of 1. So the first thing I want to check for is there going to be like mystery numbers that work. If there's no mystery numbers that work, then we'll have to use quadratic formula to finish solving this problem. Alright, so if we're going from 25 to negative 5, can we do that? So 125, 5, 5. No, not possible. So this one was not factorable. So now we're going to try the quadratic formula. Okay, so the quadratic formula, again, just Google formulas if you forget it. It's more important that you know how to use it. Let's see, is the negative boy couldn't decide if he wanted to go to the radical party. But the boy was square, he missed out on 4 awesome chicks, and the whole party was over by 2 a.m. That lovely cringe. Okay, so let's see, in this problem my A is 1, my B is negative 5, and my C is 25. Note that these are different from the sum of cubes formula. This is a big problem. Okay. I'm actually going to take care of the x plus 5 factor really quickly so we just know that it's done. So if I set x plus 5 equal to 0, I'm going to get negative 5. Okay. Yay. That one's good. We know that one's one of the answers. So now I'm going to come back to the quadratic formula side. Okay. X equals, let's see, the negative boy, so positive 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 5 squared is 25, minus 4 times a times c. So I want to figure out 4 times 1 times 25. Okay. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 25 is 100. All divided by 2a. So 2 times my a value for 2. Okay, now I just work to clean this up. 5 plus or minus square root. 25 minus 100 is negative 75. And divided by 2.